In today's video, we're examining whether eating chocolate has a significant effect on attitude over time. In this study, our participants used the Acme Attitude Survey, which yielded mean scores from 0 to 100 at 4 different time points. Before eating chocolate, 5 minutes after eating chocolate, 1 hour after eating chocolate, and 4 hours eating chocolate. Because the same participants were measured at all 4 different time points, we are using the repeated measures ANOVA as the appropriate statistical analysis in this case. So our research question is, does attitude significantly change over time after eating chocolate? Our null hypothesis is that there is no difference in mean attitude scores across the 4 time points. Of course, our alternate hypothesis is therefore that there is a significant difference in mean attitude scores across the 4 time points. So let's go ahead and set up our analysis. Here, to do that, we go to Analyze, General Linear Model, Repeated Measures, and we want to go to this within score factor and change that to time, just for something easy. And number of levels, as we said earlier, we're measuring 4. We click Add, and then click Define. Now here we see each of those time frames identified, and we want to move those all over to the within subject variables in order. So we'll go ahead and do that now. 0, attitude 1, then attitude 2, and attitude 3. Okay. Now we click on our EM means, and we again move that time factor over to the display means. And we also select the compare main effects. So we have that, we have our effect size as well. Click continue, and then under options, we want to select that. Select descriptive statistics and estimates on effect size. Click continue, and now click OK. Okay, and our data populates. And here we are, as we can see, the within subject factors, we've got all 4 of our data points. Now let's go down to the descriptive statistics. As you can see, for our attitude 0, that first measure, the pretest, we have a mean score of 76.57 with a standard deviation of 6.381. Attitude 1, 5 minutes after eating chocolate, we have a mean score of 83.87 with a standard deviation of 4.994 or 4.5. Attitude 2, which is our third measure, is 1 hour after eating the chocolate. We have a mean score of 79.09 and a standard deviation of 57.28. And our fourth score, the attitude 3, which is 4 hours after eating the chocolate, our mean score is 78.43 with a standard deviation of 6.066. So what this tells us is, as we can see, attitude 1, the test taken the measure 5 minutes after eating chocolate, is the largest mean score that we have here and is significantly higher than the pretest. We also note, just from looking at the mean scores alone, that there is a drop in scores once we move to the 1 hour mark and the 4 hour mark. So let's go ahead and take a look at our multivariate test. And we look here and we have we can already see here, we've got an F value. Well, actually, let's go past the multivariate test. Here in the multivariate test, though, I'm going to back up and just show, we see our partial eta squared score as 0.501, which is already giving us a bit about our effect size. That'll show up again. Hold on. Now, when we move down to the Moltke's test of sphericity to check our assumptions, we see our Moltke's W is 0.860 with a chi-square of 3.114 and our degrees of freedom and our 5 and significance of 0.683. And as we go down even further here, so we know that because our p-value here is 0.683 and it's greater than 0.05, the assumption of sphericity is met. So now we're going to go ahead with as we go down to the test of within subject effects, we know that we need to look at that sphericity as in line. So here again, we're seeing our degrees of freedom is 3. And we look at the error line 2 under sphericity assumed to also have our other degree of freedom at 66 and an F score of 5.681. And we also see our p-value here is 0.002. which gives us, tells us that with the p, since the p being so low, we know that we need to reject our null hypothesis and determine that in fact there is a significant difference in the attitudes over time. Moving right along, as you can see here, again, we've got our significant value there. So we are going to go ahead and go down to our comparison era, our compare-wise comparisons. So as we look here, we see that we've got, we can see all the difference between the mean scores in the pairwise comparison. This also uses that Bonferroni adjustment in SPSS. So here we see, when we look at the mean scores, the mean differences between 1 and 2 are our largest at negative 7.302. Between 1 and 2. 1 and 3 is only negative 2.522. Between 1 and 4 is negative 1.870. So we've already got that. So let's look at between 2 and 3. That's 4.783. And 2 and 4 is 5.435. Can also look here at between 3 and 4. We didn't get that one yet. Is 0.652. And I believe we've seen all of those others, so we don't need to read all of those. But what this ultimately tells us, again, is confirming that that biggest mean difference is between 1 and 2, the pretest and at the 5-minute mark. And in terms of practical, meaningful applications, as it tells us not only is it significant, but for real-world effects, this indicates that chocolate produces the strongest or the most significant effect within that area, and therefore it's a short-term effect, only giving us, within that first 5 minutes. And then we see too from our mean scores, and again from those mean differences, that after we hit that 5-minute, that largest effect of 5 minutes, there is a decrease over time, showing us that the effects of the chocolate do diminish as time goes on. And again, we've got our partial eta square down here telling us that the effect size here is quite large when we look at other effect partial eta squares and look at the effect size. So lastly, I want to go ahead and share my results in APA format. Malchi's test indicated that the assumption of sphericity was not violated. Chi-square with 5 degrees of freedom equal to 3.11 with a p-value equal to 0.683. Therefore, sphericity assumed results were interpreted. There was a statistically significant effect on time on attitude with an F score of 3 and 66, F with a 3 and 66 degrees of freedom equal to an F score of 5.68 and a p-value less than 0.01. In a partial eta square of 0.50. Mean attitude scores increased from the pretest, where the mean score was 76.57 with a standard deviation of 6.38 to 5 minutes after eating the chocolate, where the mean was 83.87 with a standard deviation of 4.99. Attitude scores then decreased at the 1 hour mark with a mean of 79.09 on their score and a standard deviation of 5.73. And decreased even further at the 4 hour mark with a mean of 78.43 and standard deviation of 6.07. The pairwise comparison using a Bonferroni adjustment indicated that the increase from pretest to 5 minutes was, in fact, statistically significant. The large effect size with the partial eta squared of 0.50 tells us that time accounts for a substantial portion of the variance in attitude scores, indicating that chocolate has a meaningful but short-term impact on attitude. That concludes today's video.